Young, talented, and jobless, Zimbabwe's youth is desperate for change from its new leadership. The threats to journalists in West Africa persist. And one of the world's most eligible bachelors is off the market. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCorry. This is Africa 54. We begin in Southern Africa. Ousted Zimbabwe Finance Minister Ignatius Chombo, charged with 3 counts of corruption in offenses that allegedly took place more than a decade ago, was denied bail on Monday and will be detained in custody until his case is heard on December the 8th. Chombo faces charges including trying to defraud the central bank. He was among those detained by the military before Robert Mugabe resigned as president. The ousted head of the influential ZANU-PF Youth League, Kudzanayi Chipanga, who was a member of a group allied to Mugabe, and his wife Grace, also appeared at the court for a bail hearing. Chombo, a Mugabe ally who had been promoted to finance minister in October, was arrested at his home in November the 15th after the military seized power. The new Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa is expected to form his new cabinet this week, with all eyes on whether he will break with the past and name a broad-based government, or he will select old guard figures from Robert Mugabe's era. However, for the many energetic, young and educated Zimbabwean youths, the priority is jobs. Viewers Anita Powell talked to young people on the streets of the capital, Harare, who say they want the new president to deliver on his promises and allow more young people into government leadership.
Innocent Kagadora should not be here. The 23-year-old holds a political science degree from Zimbabwe's top university. Yet because of Zimbabwe's soaring unemployment, which many blame on former President Robert Mugabe, here he is. Since graduating in 2015, he spends his time on this corner, selling phones 14 hours a day. His colleagues call him Comrade Graduate. He said he takes home $10 a day. Not enough, he says, to help his father.
It hurts him a lot to say, my son has a degree, my son is educated enough in Zimbabwe, but he can't even afford to send me groceries at the end of the month.
So help me God.
New President Emmerson Mnangagwa says he will improve the economy, and students plan to hold him to that promise. On the first day of his presidency, student leaders met in Harare to mobilize the youth vote for elections scheduled next year.
We will basically be calling him to account in terms of the things that he has promised. So every citizen, every young people are ways to see these things getting into reality.
At their alma mater, students say they're hopeful, but say they want leaders to change their mentality and focus on the future, not the glories of the past.
You listen to them, most of their speeches, they're still talking about the liberation struggle. I appreciate what they did, yes, but I think it's time for us to move away from that now. The ideas back then, they are not fit for the world that we're in right now.
We're hoping that with the new change in government and all that, things are going to get better.
And they worry about the youth coming behind them, like 16-year-old Advocate Kambeu, who really shouldn't be here, on a Harare street corner, selling $11 shoes on a school day. If he could afford school fees, he says, he could do big things.
I want to do politics. I think I'm talented in politics.
Mnangagwa has laid out an ambitious program of economic reform, and millions of energetic, talented young Zimbabweans, like Innocent, Ostalos, Nyasha, Nadine, and Advocate, are counting on him. Anita Powell, VOA News, Harare.
Now, to the north of the continent, Sufi Muslims in Egypt say they plan to continue organizing for an annual celebration of the birthday of their prophet Muhammad, even as the country reels from the massacre at a Sinai mosque where 305 worshippers were killed and another 128 wounded. No group has claimed responsibility for Friday's attack, widely believed in Egypt to have been launched because Sufis worshipped at the Al-Rawda Mosque in a village by the same name and are viewed as heretics by Islamic militants. Now, the Sufis say they will mark Muhammad's birth date next Friday throughout the country and at Cairo's Al-Hussein Mosque, one of Islam's most prominent sites in Egypt. On orders from President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Egypt is observing 3 days of mourning for the slaughter that unfolded just as an imam was about to deliver his sermon. In a televised address, the Egyptian leader vowed to use brute force against the attackers who fled the mosque while firing shots at ambulance workers arriving on the scene to help the victims of the attack. Now shouting Allahu Akbar or God is great, 25 to 30 militants opened fire and tossed grenades at the estimated 500 inside the mosque. A number of West African journalist advocacy groups say too many reporters in that region suffer violence, then suffer again from alleged inadequate police investigations and prosecutions of those criminal acts. VOA TV senior analyst Jeffrey Young has the details.
Journalists ask questions and report what they see. In some countries, asking questions can raise the wrath of governments and also big corporations. At times, that wrath results in violence or police action against journalists. West Africa is one place where journalists can wind up in harm's way. That's detailed via Skype from Accra, Ghana, by journalist advocacy group Media Foundation for West Africa's Muhib Saib.
From January to the end of September 2017, the Media Foundation for West Africa recorded 115 cases of freedom of expression violations. These included physical attacks, arrests and detentions, and killing of journalists. And what is very alarming is the fact that most of these violations have gone unredressed.
In late October, the MFWA and other journalist advocacy groups met in Accra and condemned what they say is a growing trend of impunity in West Africa, the lack of police and court action against those who attack reporters. The reason for this alleged lack of police response is explained via Skype from Monrovia, Liberia, by the Center for Media Studies and Peace Building's Malcolm Joseph.
The police and the media have not been on good terms because the media itself has been very critical about the operations of the police, the excesses committed by the police. And these are issues that are being highlighted on the radio stations, highlighted in the various newspapers. So the police itself is not very pleased with the performance of the media.
These advocacy groups say authorities try to inhibit journalists by hurling various accusations at them. Sometimes reporters are said to be violating so-called national security by detailing acts or contracts by government officials. Those generating stories about politics or ethnic groups can be hit with charges that they are inciting the public. And especially in the world of internet blogging and social media, journalists have been accused by governments of engaging in hate speech. Advocate groups say more must be done throughout the region, as stated via Skype from Lagos, Nigeria, by the International Press Center's Lanre Arogandadi.
Let's all the major stakeholders in West Africa, our governments, our regulatory agencies, our security, agencies, come to terms with the fact that press freedom, media independence, and freedom of expression are integral parts of democracy.
Mr. Aragandati and other advocates say enforcement of press freedom laws and an end to so-called impunity by the police and courts are essential not only for human rights, but also for West Africa to gain greater respect. Jeffrey Young, VOA News.
Well, back in the United States, a family of 9 Sudanese refugees ranging in ages from 8 to 84 is discovering an entirely new life in the farmlands of rural Virginia after being persecuted for their Christian faith. VOA's congressional reporter Catherine Gibson visited the family's new church to talk to the once imprisoned pastor. In his first interview since being freed, Hassan Abdurrahim talks about his ordeal, which ended after a U.S. lawmaker reached out to Khartoum.
Old hymns in unfamiliar English. just 6 weeks in the United States, Hassan Abdurrahim can just follow along. He's learning the hymns his new neighbors already know. And with his family at his side, sharing their hymns.
Hey, Michael. Beautiful, beautiful. Morning.
Your daughter has a really pretty voice.
Savoring a moment of peace he still can't believe is possible.
The first day when they took us to the prison, they beat us.
Pastors like Hassan aren't outlawed in his native Sudan, but Christians are an endangered minority. He says he lived with the possibility of prison every day. Of all the hardships, interrogations and tiny prison cells, Hassan says the worst was not knowing.
It really was a very hard time for me thinking of my family because I don't know anything about them.
But even a 12-year prison sentence for espionage couldn't shake his faith.
No one told me that, but I have the peace. There's something going outside, but I don't know.
Far from Sudan, a Facebook post telling Hassan's story was reaching the right person.
I didn't know any better, so I got in my car with my letter that I'd written and drove to the Sudanese embassy.
It was the first time a member of Congress had spoken to the Sudanese government in 10 years. After a lot of work and a trip to Sudan, Garrett worked with NGOs to secure Hassan's release.
I commend the Sudanese government to the extent that they were willing to acknowledge that mistakes have been made in the past and that there's a need to reassess how religious minorities are treated. That's progress.
Hassan and his family visited Washington to see the man responsible for their new life.
Thank you so much.
Oh, no, it's great seeing you guys.
It meant a lot to them and to the congressman.
You can love a bill, you can advocate on behalf of a bill, you can believe in a bill, but you can't say a prayer with the bill, have dinner with the bill, shake hands with the bill. And it was sort of surreal.
As strange as leaving the streets of Khartoum for Garrett's Virginia district, where 5 churches worked together to set up Hassan and his family with a home on the farm of their new pastor, surrounded by fields where the family will soon see snow for the first time. So many changes, but all grounded by a father's certainty.
Even though it is hard for us to leave a country, but I think it is also better. I don't want them to grow there and then to go through a lot of difficulty that I went through it. So here I know here they can have chance.
A chance made possible by churches and a congressman. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Cumberland, Virginia.
Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Now, coming up, how will Nigeria's Benue State's new anti-grazing law impact herdsmen? Stay with us.
I'm Jeff Selden, and I work the National Security Beat. National Security Beat is anything that affects the national security of the United States, from counterterrorism to surveillance to even relations with Russia. It's one of the most fascinating beats you can have. It's probably one of the more important beats that you can cover because it touches on so many areas of the world, so many areas of people's day-to-day lives. I'm Jeff Selden, and my beat is national security.
Welcome back. Now, after tremendous agitation from farmers in Benue State in the mid-belt region of Nigeria against herdsmen, the state government has finally taken the cue from Ekiti State in the southwest and passed the Open Grazing Bill as a law that prohibits herdsmen from moving around there with their cattle. Channels television reporter Oreluwa Shonibare has more.
We cannot continue to live in fear, and we cannot continue to live with killers who have no respect for human lives.
who killed, who maimed, who raped our women and children, who destroy our farmlands, and who destroy our property.
About time, many would say. Although there are those who would have preferred that the action taken by the governor happened a lot earlier to prevent avoidable deaths and destruction of property, allegedly committed by herdsmen who lead their cattle onto farms, wiping out villages if confronted. The action of the governor is supported by citizens who have lost loved ones and livelihood, and those who fear for being the next victims.
We support the government and the governor of Benue State for the anti-open grazing bill, because if you look at it, Benue State is the food basket of the nation. And if you don't go to the farm, you cannot produce that much food.
The governor swung into action, setting up grazing marshals to enforce the law. At this meeting with stakeholders, the head of the committee and security advisors of the governor lays down the rules.
You will stay in those areas that you bring your cattle back to rest for the night, and then the next morning you want to take them to go and queue. That will not happen again. You will only buy food and give them. That is what is going to happen. You will not move in that area again.
But this does not go down well with the herdsmen, who feel they're being suppressed. The spokesperson relays their message.
Look at that as an attempt to bury them on the ground. Because as far as they are concerned, we don't know any other business apart from the pastoral business. And when the law says they should stay at the place permanently and they should buy food to feed their cows from farmers, as far as they are concerned, that is a task that they do not have the strength to shoulder.
The feeling of not being in control appears too unimaginable for the herdsmen, who decide to move into the neighboring state of Cross River. And in no time, there is trouble, and one person has been killed. The villagers, mostly women, are incensed and want nothing to do with the herdsmen. The governor of Cross River is livid by the development and calls on the federal government to take the bull by the horn and stop the violence.
This is not something federal government will leave in the hands of the state. It's a thing that is very urgent. It is a thing that can split people. Federal government must come and take this decision. Federal government must have the courage to bring a scientific approach to ranching. And that's what this country needs at this point in time.
Indeed it is, because not long after the incident in Cross River State, 11 people are killed in Plateau State. The feeling there is the same as the other places where the violence occurred. Anguish and anger.
Tell us what we have done in Europe land. Why are we being killed?
There is no love lost between the cattle and the grass, but there is certainly a problem with those who control them. And the sooner the differences are permanently resolved by the authorities, the better. Otherwise, there may be nothing left to fight over.
Where's the peace?
Orelu Ashonibare for Channels VOA, Washington.
Well, in Rwanda, the number of schoolgirls studying science, technology, and engineering and mathematics, the so-called STEM fields, is climbing steadily. It is part of an ambitious government agenda to transform the economy. In the past decade, several STEM schools for girls have opened in Rwanda amid the rising demand. Chika Odua reports for VOA from Kigali.
Jeanette Gahunga graduated from university 3 months ago with a degree in computer programming. She's already back in the classroom, passing on what she learned. They're creating their own interactive animations. Half the students are girls.
They are able to make innovation, and they are not shy as it was before. Now they are really learning very hard. The girls in my class, they are doing the same as boys. They are hardworking as others, and they are following very well.
Demand for STEM education is growing in Rwanda as the country tries to position itself as a tech hub and attain middle-income status. Latest statistics from the Ministry of Education show that over half of girls in secondary school now opt to enroll in science classes. Specialized schools like the top-ranked Fawe Gisozi School in Kigali get funding from the government. Today, the students determine the concentration of sodium hydroxide in a solution. They're using a common laboratory method called titration.
So, believing that they have that potential of doing sciences as well as boys, I think it's very good for them, because with sciences, one can do many things.
18-year-old Yvonne wants to be a chemical engineer. 19-year-old Keza wants to be a pilot, and her backup plan is to be a pharmacist. She's been a student here for 3 years.
The first thing which came into my mind before choosing this course that I wanted to live with girls who know what they want. The reason I want to become the pilot is that we're having few girls who are pilots, and I want to show people that yes, we can as girls.
Mentoring is crucial for girls pursuing STEM because cultural barriers and challenges still exist. At support groups like this one, female science students from various schools come together to express their concerns and share their professional goals. Support comes in other ways as well. Keza is on a rare visit to see her family. They ask God to help her become a pilot. Keza's mother works cleaning houses. Keza's father continues to suffer poor health after being violently attacked during the 1994 genocide. Keza is the only one in school, and the family is counting on her. Chika Odua in Kigali for VOA News.
Indeed, girls are smart, just as the boys. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Get ready for the royal wedding. This time, Prince Harry and his American love. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. Now, there will be a royal wedding in 2018. Sweet star Meghan Markle and Prince Harry of Wales announced their engagement on Monday after weeks of speculation, with the clearance house revealing the wedding will take place next spring. The couple's union will be the biggest royal wedding since William and Kate, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, wed in 2011. Markle, meanwhile, will become the first American to marry a direct heir to the throne since Willie Simpson married King Edward VIII in 1937. Well, next up, the month before Christmas is the most important season for toy companies, with retailers hoping to have predicted correctly the must-have Christmas toy. Last month, the Dream Toys event in London brought together a board of industry analysts and experts to pick the top toys they expect to be the most sought after this Christmas. It might all look like fun and games, but this is a serious business. In the UK alone, annual Christmas toy sales are worth over £1 billion. Now, the average Christmas toy spent per child is £121, with an average of 11 presents received. Well, and finally, an online trend for extravagant food styling has turned a green-themed Amsterdam eatery into a must-see location for smartphone snapping tourists. The Avocado Show opened earlier this year and claims to be Europe's first all-avocado restaurant. The restaurant had around 36,000 Instagram followers before they even opened in March. They now have almost 84,000 followers and have been tagged in almost 4,000 picture posts. The Avocado Show received around 80 franchise requests before even opening. That grew to over 150. At least 2 new European locations look likely to be there by early next year. And that is what is trending today. Now, the fashion and textile industry could generate nearly 500,000 jobs in sub-Saharan Africa over the next decade. That's according to the Africa Development Bank, which launched its Fashionomics initiative in 2015 to revitalize the industry. However, designers in the region still struggle to grow their businesses. Lenny Rovaga reports for VOA from Nairobi.
Mukadem Latif and Keith Macharia cater to a high-end clientele in Nairobi. One of their M+K brand shirts costs as much as $200. While sales have been good, they face obstacles to growth.
Finding production houses that are affordable and also in line with our vision and our quality. Also finding collateral to further our brand and to finance all the different projects that we have in mind at the moment.
Latif got a $750 grant from Equity Bank to complete his design studies. The funds were part of a $148 million line of credit from the African Development Bank to grow small businesses in Kenya. But young designers around Nairobi say they struggle to get startup capital.
Not everyone is lucky to be able to start without a capital like me, but banks cannot give you a loan if you don't have something to show them or you don't have security. So how are we supposed to do the businesses without capital?
Ruby Amondi started Style by Ruby 2 years ago. She now employs 6 tailors. A recent study found that Kenya's fashion and textile industry has the potential to create 300,000 jobs, in particular for women and the youth. Some entrepreneurs are turning to the internet to reduce overhead. Valerie Nyamwaya runs Afrivazi, a fashion website that sells clothes on behalf of designers. This site produces a monthly profit of around $1,000.
Having the online platform enables them to be able to sell their products without having to go through the process of setting up. And also expertise through Afrivazi, they're able to fine-tune their products so that they can meet international market standards.
African countries, including Kenya, have considered banning the import of cheap second-hand clothes to foster local industry. Large production houses do exist in Kenya, though the products are mainly for export. This kind of operation is out of reach for most local designers, at least for now. The Kenyan government has partnered with Hivos International and the African Development Bank to open a fashion production house in 2018 that will offer affordable manufacturing facilities to 300 local designers annually. Lenny Rovaga for VOA News, Nairobi.
And that's our show for today. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. A plate is a dish that you put your food on.
Have a lot on your plate.
Hey Anna, I'm having a party this weekend. You should come.
I wish I could, but my weekend is really busy. I'm baking a wedding cake, writing my article, teaching 2 classes, and oh, my parents are visiting.
Wow, you have a lot on your